Alrighty, so we are rolling. My name's Etan, and I'm really pleased to have Terence here today with me. And I just finished reading his new book, Rare Stamps, which was a real pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, it's a treat to meet you in person. And yeah, no, it's just great. And this book, what I found really amazing about it was what a rich life you've had already, and just how many amazing people you've met from like Orson Welles to Diana, Princess Diana. I mean, it boggles the mind. Is there anyone you haven't met? Actually, that's a good question. Is there someone you haven't met that you wish you had? Actually. Maybe not.
Living, you mean?
Oh. Yes.
I would love to have met Churchill.
Yeah, no, but someone, because that would have been hard, I guess. Or
Yeah,
could it have
because
happened?
I'd have been little, but I would like to have met him.
It could have happened.
Would like to have heard his voice in life, you know.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy. Actually, I don't know if you heard, but there's supposedly Geoffrey Watkins, who was John Watkins' son,
right,
was Churchill's astrologer.
Really?
Yeah, and the story goes that Churchill actually didn't believe in astrology, but the reason he had Geoffrey advising him was that apparently some of the Nazi strategists did, and they would plan some of their attacks based on auspicious timings, and so in order to be ahead of the game, Churchill wanted to know what they might be thinking. Oh. So Geoffrey, there you go. That's the tie-in. But yeah, amazing. But okay, yeah. Anybody else?
No, I think I've actually met most of the people that right at the beginning of my life I always had ambitions to meet, and so I can't really think of anybody. I mean, I would love to have worked with Buñuel.
Ah, Jesus, of course.
Yeah. And I would love to have met Buñuel, but he was the one I kind of missed out on,
Yeah, well, that's a tough one. I mean, I saw he actually had a movie. I saw his movie from like the late '70s or something. The one where I forget what it was. It was a very weird one. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where there was like a terrorist attack in there, and just it was very weird. But he was a real genius.
Yeah,
certainly
would have been a very interesting guy to meet.
Absolutely. But you spent actually a good amount of time in Spain, right?
Oh yeah, I had a period where I worked a lot in Spain, and I guess really the great blessing of my life is that I had the really hard bit at the beginning because we were really poor, and it was hard to I couldn't tell anybody that I wanted to be an actor because it was just out of the question. It would have been laughed at. It was like my secret.
And your father apparently at first
Well, when we got our first TV and I started saying, "Oh, I could do that," and he wore it for a little bit. And then after I'd said something about, "Oh, I'm sure I could do better than that guy," and he looked at me and he said, "Son, people like us don't do things like that." And I went to object, and he said, "Son, I don't want you to talk about it anymore."
Ouch.
And because he was an alpha male. I mean, he was a stoker.
Yeah.
But he was a considerable man, but he didn't say very much. So when he said something,
that was that.
So I had to leave home because I couldn't actually go against him and stay living there, Yeah. So consequently, when I was just 18, nearly 19, that was when I left home, and it was everybody locally was very shocked because the eldest son, you just got married and you moved into the front room. That was it. You certainly didn't leave home and go and live in a basement in Harley Street.
Yeah, amazing. Well, how did you do that, and how did you get by? Actually.
I knew a guy who lived in East Ham. He lived behind something called Pronto Cleaners. It was opposite the East End, East Ham, Granada. And he also wanted to be an actor. And he was the first person I ever met in the East End that was sympathetic. So when I decided, look, I'm going to do this, what do you think? He said, well, we'll do it together. So we got a basement, and he knew another boy.
Did he ever make it in the acting world?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's tough.
I don't think so. He was very talented, and I just lost track of him like you do, you know.
Sure.
But we needed the third boy because the rent was sort of 12 quid a week, and we couldn't afford £6 a week each, you know.
What did you do to make ends meet?
Well, I just continued working in an ad agency.
Okay, that's right.
Until I.
What did you do in the ad agency?
Well, I started in the business as a kind of what they call a filing clerk messenger boy, you know. Mm-hmm. And I realised, whilst I liked delivering messages because I was getting to know the West End,
sure,
I realised that it wasn't going anywhere. So I redid the filing system, so nobody could find anything unless they asked me.
Yeah.
So then the agency brought in an old age pensioner called Mr. Appleby, and I was permanent in the studio.
Wow.
And then I just sort of apprenticed myself to the designers and the typographers, and very quickly I became a visualizer typographer, you know.
That's amazing.
And then every time I changed my job, I just doubled my salary, you know.
Yeah, it's like starting up in the mailroom, almost, not exactly, and just
exactly.
building your way up.
Yeah. But the truth was that because at school I had always been considered like a real idiot because I wasn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't respond to learning by rote.
Sure.
Which at the time was it.
Yeah, there's so many different ways, and now people are open to it, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy.
So the teachers just knew that I was dumb. But what was interesting to me was that.
Bless you.
Thank you. On Monday morning.
I'll edit that out.
Thank good. The other kids in the class would come to me and they'd want to know what I did at the weekend. So as I was bottom of the class, I realised that I must have some kind of street smarts. Mm-hmm. And when I got out of school after failing all my GCEs,
wow.
As soon as I could study things I wanted to study, I realised I was just one of the world's great pupils.
You were much more of an autodidact and wanted to kind of study things you were passionate about.
Yeah.
Because you from what several times it comes up in the book that you love to read, and apparently you've got quite a hell of a library, right? So it sounds like you're always learning, right?
Yeah, no, I'm always learning, but I'm a great student. I'm a great student. But the thing is that all happened as a result of completing school. When I could use my own, I think they call it nous, when I could use my own street smarts.
Yeah, sure.
Then I was just, I really made headway. You know, I really made headway. And the fact was that as soon as I got to drama school, I had to win a scholarship. They had to pay me.
Yeah.
I passed the audition at RADA, I passed the audition at Lambda, but they couldn't give me any money. Mm-hmm. But because it was a full-time course, I couldn't work and go to drama school.
Right. So
the scholarship at Webber Douglas, I think it was about £8 a month, I think. And it just paid the rent.
Yeah.
So the rumour...
How old were you when you started drama school?
19.
Okay.
So the rumour at Webber Douglas amongst the girls...
Wait, sorry, I'm just trying to get this straight. So you moved to London, started working your way up in the ad agency.
When I was 16.
Oh, when you were 16.
I left school when I was 16.
That's amazing. Okay, so it was 3 years before you actually...
So by the time I was got into drama school, I was earning $1,000 a year. I mean, I was
Wow.
designing,
Yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah,
typography
amazing.
and stuff.
Wow.
But when I got into drama school, I was limited because I had this.
Yeah, you had to go all out.
And there was a rumour amongst the girls at Weber Douglas that I was anybody's for a bowl of soup.
You said it was
Croissant.
true.
And it wasn't exactly untrue.
Well, why not?
But then I got a job in the evening, you see, in theatre. And I was helped Paul Schofield to get dressed in a show called Espresso Bongo. And then my big break came when I got to work a follow spot at Her Majesty's in
Wow.
West Side Story. So not only did I see West Side Story 8 times a week, I also got to see Chita Rivera.
Yeah.
And that became an ideal for me because I thought, she can sing, she can dance, and she can act.
A real triple threat.
I thought, that's the way to go. I've got to have that covered, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a real inspiration for me, in fact.
Have you covered that? Can you?
I can sing, obviously I can act, and I can dance if I have to. Like if I get a choreographer, I can learn a routine.
Absolutely, yeah. You can learn anything. So,
Yeah.
sure.
You know, it's like easy once you really work.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they give you the best. You know.
That's right.
For example, when I did Far From the Madding Crowd, Schlesinger just didn't want me. He wanted John Voight. He just didn't want me. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And the producer made him take me, so I had a very hard time with him. Somebody else, he wanted a blonde. He didn't like brunettes, obviously. But he said to me before the movie, "Oh well, you can't be left-handed because they didn't let left-handed men into the cavalry before 1860. So you have to learn the sword with your right hand." Now, I had never used my right hand.
Jeez.
I mean, I'm one of those people. I'm a real lefty. You know?
Yeah.
So they got me a guy who was a great swordsman, and I started using my right hand,
Wow.
which I'd mastered. But interestingly enough, the next movie I did was a western called Blue, and I had to play a cowboy who could fast draw with both hands.
Oh.
So I went to shoot that in America, and they got me the fastest gun in the West, you know, to teach me how to fast draw. And what was amazing to me was that he noticed that my right hand was faster.
Unbelievable. Why? Why was that?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But from that moment on, every new skill I did with my right hand.
Wow.
So I was able
To this day.
to this day. So
Wow.
in other words, I use chopsticks with my
That's incredible.
but
But you write with your left.
I write with I learned to write with my right,
Sure.
but when I started scribbling for books and stuff, it wasn't fast enough. So I write all in pencil with my left hand.
Yeah.
But I think that it kind of evened up the balance between the hemispheres, you know. So
Yeah.
that was a wonderful thing that happened to me.
It's a known exercise sometimes to try and balance yourself out, to force yourself to use your other hand or do certain things just
Yes.
to open up your mind.
Yes, absolutely. And I've recently been reading a book called The Way the Brain Heals Itself, I think it's called. And it's full of, well, it's not full of, but it's 5 or 6 incidents whereby people with incurable conditions are able to rewire the pathways in their brain by doing something, because apparently once you stop using something,
Yeah.
the brain shuts down the
So it's to
pathway.
rot. Yeah, it's that plasticity, right?
Yeah, but it will reignite. It will make new pathways if you kind of insist.
Stimulate it.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I mean, that's also all this research on neuroplasticity. It's quite new. It's only like in the last decade or so that people have said, "Wow, you can actually, change your brain." It used to be that they used to think that at 18 that was the peak, and then you just lost basically gray like cells, and
Yeah.
that was that. But now we know that that's not the case at all.
yeah.
So-
I mean, there's a guy in the book. There's a case in the book where a guy is so, his eyes are so bad, he's actually had the lenses of his eyes removed. And he starts studying, he comes across Dr. Bates and...
Sure. Bates is a very popular person in our, obviously, like the Bates method in our store.
He winds up with 20/20 vision. You know. He
Okay.
actually restores his eyes using Bates
The
method. Well, I
exercises.
heard about the Bates from Krishnamurti, who died
Yeah.
age 90 with 20/20 vision.
So,
And
yeah. It's
Aldous
amazing.
Huxley had told him about Bates.
Really?
And Aldous taught him the exercises, and Krishnamurti did them every day. You know.
Wow.
So that's the way he kept his eyes perfect.
We had in the bookstore a talk recently by a follower of Bates named Mayor Schneider. He's in San Francisco, and he's considered to be the kind of expert on the Bates method, and he's very popular. It still has a good amount of
Well,
traction.
it makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What Bates knew about the eye, and the problem is that with the advent of computers and cell phones and emailing, Bates says that the eye is designed to work perfectly across its whole curved spectrum.
Yeah.
And with this prevalence of looking straight ahead, you lose peripheral vision. So that's the beginning of the eye decaying.
Yeah, it's awful.
Terrible.
It's awful. Bates method. Yeah, he was saying, Mayor Schneider, I mean, he was saying lots of really interesting things. He said also that we should avoid wearing sunglasses, if possible, and just let the eye adjust.
Yeah.
Because our eyes are, they're designed to adjust. They're designed to actually also, in the old days, we'd have to also look at the horizon a lot, which is really good, which we don't do. Like you said, we're just looking at things nearby, and it's so good for the eyes to explore and to adjust, and it's really interesting. So I try and make a conscious effort these days not to use sunglasses.
Oh, I've never used sunglasses, because on my first movie, the cameraman said to me, because it's black and white, and he was using a lot of light, and he said, he was called Robert Krasker, he lit the third man, so he was like,
Wow.
it was not nothing, as we say in
Yeah.
so, and he was using a lot of light. He used the sun, he had reflector boards, and he had what we call brutes, which are like follow spots, the carbon arcs. And on the first day, I just couldn't keep my eyes open. You know what I mean? What am I going to do?
Too much.
And he got me into it slowly. But he said to me, he was Australian. He said, "You must never wear sunglasses, Terence." And I never have.
Wow.
And by the end of the movie, I built up. I could handle it. Okay, absolutely okay.
Yeah,
so I've never worn sunglasses. It's just like because it was Robert Krasker.
Yeah.
He told me that. It's like Olivier.
Wow.
On my second movie.
I wonder where he had that intuition from.
Well, no, but he was a lighting cameraman. I mean, he painted with light.
Yeah.
So he worked with all the great artists. I mean, this is before Technicolor.
Yeah.
But because I knew he was such a great man. And when I saw the movie, Usmanov said, "I don't want you to see Russians because it might disturb you."
Sure.
So when I went to the premiere, which was at the Leicester Square Theatre, I was totally overwhelmed with how Krasker had made me look,
Yeah.
because he'd made me look better in film than I looked in real life. So
You look
I
great
gave
in
up
real
the
life,
stage that night, you know what I mean?
Wow.
I thought, this is my destiny,
Yeah. Well, good lighting, right? I mean, that can make. I think was it like Marlene Dietrich? I think she had like her own personal person she always worked with, right? Like,
No, I mean, I just got to work with the best,
Yes,
When
of course,
I
that's
went,
different these
when
days,
I
but-
went to Hollywood, which was my first colour movie, Willie Wyler had Robert Surtees, who was one of the great American. But it's funny because on my second movie, which was with Olivier, I was playing a small part, but Olivier said to me, he had requested that I join the company for Chichester. And because I was on a big ego trip, like Billy Budd hadn't come out, but I'd had my first encounter with publicity, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to my agent, "Oh, what parts are there?" You know. So the agent called Olivier and said, "Terence wants to know what parts." And Olivier just said, "Forget it."
Ouch.
So when I did the movie with him, I mean, he was a very interesting man. He came up to me on the first day and he said, "You know, it's lucky you didn't join the company for Chichester because you really, you know, your voice just wouldn't have made it." And I wasn't about to get punched up by anybody, you know. And I said, "Well, what about your voice? You call that great?" I said, "You know, you talk like that." And so he was totally. He said, "Oh well, it's only since the Entertainer." And I said, anyway, a few days later, he must have thought to himself, "He's a bit like me, that kid." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so he came up to me and he said, "You know something? You should always study your voice because as your looks fade, your voice becomes empowered."
Mm.
Now, because it was him, I don't think I've missed a day doing my breathing exercises.
Yeah. That's
Because it was him. You understand? Hamlet, Henry V, Richard III.
it's amazing. Yeah.
You can't overlook a guy like that. If a guy like that offers you
Yeah. He
advice,
knows. Yeah.
it's serious. You know?
Absolutely. You have a great saying in the book, something about when you're asking for diamonds and somebody offers you rubies, take them as well.
Pick them up, yes.
Absolutely. And you have an amazing voice, and that's actually voices. It's a very interesting thing because that is something that really can improve over time, right? Because you look a lot like even opera singers, right? They have to have a minimum age before they even have the full capacity, right, of expressing themselves.
Because if you think about it, in the beginning was the word, right? So that means, like, from the silence, there's a change in vibration, which is the word, which is the voice. So subconsciously, and nobody's voice is the same. I mean, that's the miracle of it.
It's amazing.
But we were talking about Churchill. Well, that voice, you know. Now, I have only ever met or listened to one other politician whose voice impressed me, and that was Bill Clinton.
Amazing voice.
And you just felt a kind of magnetism. You know what I mean? I mean, he's a very smart man.
Yes.
But the only other politician I've met who studied voice was Thatcher. Now, Thatcher didn't have a great voice, but she did go to Olivier. And Olivier did teach her.
Wow.
So although her voice was like strident, it was piercing.
Yes.
Whereas today's politicians, you don't listen, do you? Because there's no magnetism, there's no luminosity about their voice, you know.
Yeah.
And you can't disguise that
No.
unless you work on your voice.
I mean, I wonder, actually, it's funny, did Ronald Reagan have an advantage coming into politics from acting?
Well, he had the timing, didn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the timing is the magic, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the timing, you know. And
Timing
that's,
is everything.
yeah, and for comedy and for delivery. And I noticed something about, I was watching Obama talking.
He's got a good voice.
He's got a good voice, but his voice, he was talking to a British journalist, and it wasn't scripted. I mean, it was spontaneous. And what I realized was that his spontaneous voice is so much more beautiful than his public speaking voice.
Wow.
In other words, his intonation
Yeah.
is more varied
Yes,
and
absolutely.
more natural because it's spontaneous.
Sure.
It's not been written by him or somebody else.
Yeah.
So although he's a very good public speaker, but in person he must be like Clinton, because to talk to Clinton was heaven, you know what I mean? Because you felt his intelligence in the way that he never made me feel intimidated. But every time I said something that made him realize.
Definitely an amazing voice. Actually, you also mentioned in the book meeting the Queen Mother.
At her birthday party, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, in getting to sing her happy birthday with Pavarotti.
That's right. Because
everybody had to sing. That was his demand.
It was in somebody's apartment.
Yeah.
In Albany, where I lived for many years. And Bernard Levin said, "Maestro, would you please sing happy birthday to the Queen Mother?" And Maestro said, "If everybody else accompanies me." So we all joined in. But the interesting thing about her was that when I met her, which was sort of informal, it's not completely informal.
Sure. It's never completely
informal. So the woman who was the hostess, was an American artist called Fleur Coles. And you arranged, it was a kind of little, not a line, but like a sort of group of people, and then she would bring you up and introduce you one at a time, you know.
Yeah.
So when I was taken up, the Queen Mother was sitting down, and I was guided to her, and she said, "Oh, so you're an actor?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "What would I have seen you in?" And I thought, well, it was her 80th birthday. I thought she can't get out to the pictures much, you know. So I said to her, "Do you have a video?" Because I thought. And she said, "Yes, I have a video, but I prefer to go to the cinema because I like it when the lights go out." Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, she's really nailed that. Yeah. Because that's the moment, isn't it? Where you hand over your individuality.
You become part of the group and you share the experience. You're back at the fireplace.
Yes. And then you get the feeling from Gary Cooper or Marlon Brando or whoever's doing it for you, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How was her voice, the Queen Mother in person? Like
well, it was just kind of high and sort of it wasn't a received pronunciation. It wasn't like my voice.
Yeah.
I did a radio the other day and the woman had a wonderful voice, and I said to her, it was called the Culture Club, and I said to her at the end of the show, "Tell me something, is your voice RP, or did you grow up speaking like that?" And she said, "Oh, well, no, I grew up speaking." So it's really, you know, if you have a big accent like I did, you have to learn RP, but you have to not sacrifice what it's tethered to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And the first great voice imprint in my life, I guess, was when I saw The Razor's Edge. And I wanted to, look like Tyrone Power, and I wanted to marry Gene Tierney, but the guy...
That was. I think I saw that. That's the. It's like after the crash in 1929. Is that what that is? It's a no.
No, it's
No, not the movie. I mean the story. Is that the one where, like he's in love with someone, but she goes and marries like a rich guy instead because. But after the stock market crashed, that rich guy loses everything or something or no.
No, he.
Sorry.
It's basic. No, it's really interesting because
it's a bit confusing.
It's Somerset Maugham. Actually writing about his meeting with Ramana Maharshi.
Okay, sorry, I completely different.
So it's about a man who, as a result of losing this great love, he goes to India on this voyage of discovery, and that's why it's called The Razor's Edge, because it's a way of living in the moment, you know, that was actually put to Somerset Maugham by Ramana Maharshi, who was the great master of the
definitely
Fortism. Yeah. And I think physically, I would like to have met him, Ramana Maharshi.
Sure.
It's physically so beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But anyway, in the movie, in that version of Razor's Edge, the actor who plays Somerset Maugham was called Herbert Marshall.
Mhm.
And his voice just stayed with me, and I thought, how wonderful, because it wasn't like a voice like Orson or Charles Lawton, but I just loved it, and that he was the first time I realised that the magic of the voice is to find your own voice, and then broaden that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeping the alchemy of your voice is keeping the voice you're born with,
Yeah.
but pushing out the boundaries of it.
It's like your brand in a way, right? That can, it can have certain mutational
Yeah.
abilities.
But it's working, like, when I go to auditions or when I go to meet directors and things, I'm mindful that although they may not be thinking about the voices of the actors they're interviewing, it's having an imprint on them.
At least subconsciously.
Yeah, and it's the first thing, really. They look at you and they wouldn't see you unless they thought you were physically right for the part.
That's right.
But when you walk into the room, they listen to you. That's the next big step.
Christopher Walken has an interesting voice, right? Also a certain personality, right? It's true. So many great actors. It's true. You associate. You don't think about it. It's more the visual characteristics, but when you really think about it, there's so much more.
But when
to the voice,
when I met Marlon, I mean,
wow, yeah, what a voice!
What a strange voice, and he doesn't appear to be using 3/4 of his voice, because when he talks to you, hi man, what you doing now? And he doesn't appear to be, but if he needs to use it, it's like an axe coming through your consciousness, the way he delivers things.
Absolutely. Amazing. So you learned at a young age that you were actually allergic to gluten and to dairy products. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And and then later on, how apparently it led you also to start your own company in
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was born intolerant because they took my tonsils out when I was like 3, so I didn't have any say in it.
your appendix later
And
on
they
as
took
well,
my
right?
appendix when I was 12. And then I started getting these terrible digestive pains, And they said, oh, it's ulcers. They wanted to cut out the ulcers. Now, but by this time, I'm like 23, 24. And I say, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know really what to do. So I carried on just kind of experimenting and taking drugs and taking digestive things and hoping that the pain would stop. And when I worked with Fellini, I got on like a house on fire with Fellini. But
That sounds like an amazing treat, by the
No.
way, but we won't digress.
my life changed in Rome, I must say. And when he wrote the piece with Peter O'Toole in mind, because Peter O'Toole chatted him up at airports and stuff, and he sent him the screenplay, and Peter phoned him late at night and said, sorry darling, I don't want to do your movie, goodbye.
Wow.
So Fellini
Good for you.
apparently, or reputedly, phoned a casting director here and said, send me your most decadent actors. So James Fox and I went.
Wow.
And I was still like, I was like smoking, and I was doing the occasional joint, and I was drinking, and I'd had my hair dyed blonde for this Western, and it was growing out. So when I got off the plane, I had beads. Fellini looked at me with love.
Yeah.
So he didn't let me go home. He moved me into his apartment, or his house,
Wow.
with him and his missus.
Amazing.
And then when the movie got really near, he couldn't hang out with me because I couldn't speak a word of Italian, of course. So he gave me this interpreter. And she said to me, you should try. She said to me, I'm an astrologer. She said, I know I'm interpreting for you, but I'm actually an astrologer, and actually I'm Feline's astrologer. Do you know what time you were born? And I said, well, no, I don't really. And she said, could you find out? Could you ask your mum? And I said, yeah. And I just got my folks a telephone.
Wow.
They were still living in the East End. It was on a little table in the hall, or the passage as we used to call it. She said, no, you were the first, right? I said, yes. She said, your mum she might not want to remember it because it's the first, it was very painful. So be prepared to trick her, be prepared to say, do you remember when you went to hospital, or do you remember when your water broke? You know, she gave me all these questions. Mm-hmm. So I called my mother.
Because in astrology, the minute is very important, right? It's not just the day. My mom's an astrologer, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, well, this has been a lot. So I called Albert Dock 1812. That was their number. So I phoned it from Rome, and my mum, hello. I said, oh, it's Terry. Oh, hello, Terry. And I heard her say, Tom, your boy's on the phone. He's calling from Rome, you know. And I said, Mum, listen, you don't happen to remember what time I was born, do you? She said, oh, it was 12 o'clock. They play music while you work on the wireless.
Oh, wow.
She remembered exactly.
Perfect. That's great.
And when Patrizia did my chart, she decided that because of the very unusual configuration of the planets, that I was born 1158.
Wow.
So my mother got it like exactly right. You know?
Yeah.
But when she'd done my chart, I always believed that I was like a Leo.
Okay. Oh, I see. Because you're right on the cusp.
22nd.
Yeah.
And I thought, same day as Alexander the Great, I thought, we must be Leos. You know what I mean? I naturally assumed we were Leos. Right?
But anyway. You just had a birthday recently.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Days, thank you. Anyway, Patrizia said to me, you're not a Leo, you're a Cancer. And when I get the date, I'll prove it to you.
Wow.
She said you were on the last degree of Cancer, very last degree. So in other words, on my birthday, which was last Thursday, it went into Leo about 12:30 in the afternoon. Like it shifted. You see the sun went.
Yes.
So Patrizia said to me, you should stop eating. You should try being a vegetarian because that will help. And I thought, oh God, you know, it was everything I loved kind of thing.
Because you're a Cancer, by the way, just to make it clear. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And she said, like, the weakness of the archetype is the digestive system. It's like a crab. Like the tummy is no shell. Just
yeah.
And then when I came back here, after that movie, it had improved a lot, but not completely. And that's when I met Dr. Morn, who was the head of the Druids at the time. And he said to me, look, it's unnatural for most people to eat what he called modern wheat or dairy, anything to do with cows. Yeah. Because the molecule is to make baby cows very big very quickly. So it's not compatible with our digestive system. And the way that wheat has been hybrid to increase the gluten content. And in truth, to this day, I can have ancient wheat, I can have spelt, I can have kamut.
Sure.
I can have goat's cheese, I can have sheep cheese. But any wheat or dairy, I get symptoms immediately. Like dairy gives me mouth ulcers, wheat gives me indigestion. And it was painful.
So just to be clear, so you already had become a vegetarian after being in Italy.
Yes.
And but you still had these allergies. So it was only this Dr. Morm, the head of the Druids, who had you try and basically test out different allergies. It mentions in the book something about starting a basic rice diet and boiling like a cabbage or something to drink the water.
So I could get all the nutrients.
Yeah. And then slowly try
introducing things one at a time. That was what he said I should do. And the whole vegetarian thing was inspired by Krishnamurti, because Fellini had introduced me to Krishnamurti. And I had never met, well, of course I'd never met an enlightened man before, you know.
Sure.
So it was a completely, and I was just an Eastern spirit. I had
Sure.
a lot of publicity, but I was winging it.
Yeah.
I was really winging it.
Sure.
And when I was sat opposite this little guy, who seemed radiant to me, he just seemed lit from within. Do you know what I mean? Like,
It's amazing.
And everything, he didn't say very much to me, so I just started imitating like what he was. And he was a vegetarian. He didn't drink or smoke. So
he was your role model.
yeah, he became my role model.
And so you stopped drinking and smoking?
Absolutely.
Because it mentions in the book that you rarely drink. You're almost a teetotaler, and that even when you were low on cash, you'd even sell old bottles of wine you weren't drinking anyway, just to get by. But that's amazing, and obviously a real testament to the fact that it works. Because here you are, you said, great health, you barely ever get sick, right?
I do get sick, but it only lasts a couple of hours. I mean, it's not a big deal, because the immune system's like.
You mentioned that your ex-wife was very envious of the fact that she would get the flu for like 2 weeks, and
and it was just annoying for her.
And she would try all these drugs, and you basically just naturally. That's amazing. So it sounds like you're very blessed to be in such good health, and also again we mentioned eyesight too. You've got great eyesight, right?
But I'm also open to stuff,
Yeah.
I'm just open to stuff.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, it just amazes me really when I walk around. I mean, I travel on the tube and I travel on buses and I walk those places, and I see the degree that people are overweight.
Yeah. Wow. And it's much worse when you get outside of the pedestrian areas where people drive, right? I mean, in America, it's just so many people are obese because they don't even walk.
Yeah, but I don't, and I don't. I must say that, like, I'm what Krishnamurti calls selfishly intelligent. Like, I don't give a toss what other people do. I just don't.
For yourself, yeah.
It takes all my energy to deal with myself. But it's sad. It's sad about sugar. Like, it's just sad because I've got young relatives, like I've got godchildren, who are like 8, 9, and their teeth are rotting.
Jeez.
And it's everywhere, and parents can't do anything because the kids go to school and everybody's drinking soft drinks. Same with
that's
plastic.
awful. Soft drinks are so bad for you.
Same with plastic. You go to Waitrose, they've got a bag ready for you, plastic bag. You know what I mean? The ocean's like polluted, but
I see so much plastic. Yeah, actually, research has shown also how bad it is to have how plastic can be bad for you. It depends on how you use it, but especially if you have bottled water and it's hot, it's heated, and the plastic starts to kind of get into the water.
Or you drink just a few mouthfuls. But as I say, I don't. That's other people's business. Do you understand? Like, I don't use plastic.
Yeah.
I don't buy bottled water in plastic bottles. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I'm out. I go to a shop that has in glass. I'd rather. But it's sad for me because I'm not unconnected with everybody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel connected with everybody, and I think it's sad when people can hardly walk because they're so overweight. And nobody, you can't expect politicians to care.
It's tough. I mean, Bloomberg in New York, he introduced a law where they had to, on menus, they had to actually give you a lot of nutritional information, including the amount of salt that was used. And apparently, it sounds like maybe it has had some sort of effect. But it's interesting to see people trying to do something about it. But it's tough. I mean, in the end of the day, everybody's responsible for their own life. They have to, right? They have to. All you can do is try and inform them.
Well, I'm a great one for one of the first proper books I ever read was when I left East End. I think David Baxter, my mate, he gave me a copy of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet.
Love the book.
And there was something there that resonated with me. And I think it was words to the effect that if a tree is green, or if a bush is green, and one leaf turns red, the bush is different. And I thought, if I can make it to be that leaf,
You can
I'm
start,
making,
you can
I'm
start the
making a
change.
difference. Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to shout at anybody. I don't need to be concerned with everybody else.
Yeah.
And you know, as the years have passed, I realised the implications of that, of just the amount of energy that one needs to be mindful, to notice when thought has taken over, you know what I mean? When thought has taken you out of the moment, you know, it's not easy
Not at all.
for the mind to observe itself. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that's the great challenge, actually. Great challenge. Yeah, it's very interesting. Sounds like you've really, you've done a great job in learning to be yourself and listen to your body, and also in the book you mentioned a lot how you also enjoy your own company, how important it is for a person to be able to enjoy being who they are. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I guess I don't think you can spend time alone unless you stop thinking of it as being lonely. You know, I think of the time I spend on my own as being solitary,
Mm-hmm.
and I think of aloneness as being empty. I think of aloneness as
I agree completely.
being completely in the moment, you know, and that entails, I regard the best of myself as that part of myself that has the possibility of being conscious of itself. I think that's the best part of me, is that part of me that can be conscious of itself, you know. So, and what I find is that in the beginning, you know, when I started understanding things or trying to understand things like that, that it was less distracting when I was alone. And it was, you know, becoming kind of aware when I was alone was easier. So that when I got used to being at one with myself, I had the kind of confidence to take that out with me.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that,
Now, the change within is.
but I started in front of the camera. That was the great blessing of my life as a performer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I saw Gary Cooper when I was like 3.5. And I was in love with Gary Cooper. I wanted to be
Absolutely.
in the Foreign Legion. You know? And then I saw Cary Grant. But they were so much greater than anything I aspired to. But I did feel the empathy. I felt something in me felt similar.
Yeah.
So that when I started seeing people like Brando, James Dean, I would love to have met James Dean.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
I thought, I'm like that. But they're doing it. So when I got my break in movies, I thought, if I can just find that part of me, if I can somehow give the best of myself, people out there will feel like I did
Absolutely.
when I saw Dean in the cinema, when I saw Brenda. Do you understand? So
Absolutely, yeah.
I thought to myself, yeah, that's what I can do. Like I don't want to, I'm not a teacher, I'm a pupil, you know. But if by being a pupil, I can become a creative artist. And really from my first movie, and it wasn't intentional, it was just something that happened to me during the shoot, between action and cut. That there was the kind of otherness manifesting. There was no question that I couldn't avoid it, but I didn't want to anyway. It was so obviously like a different energy, it was a different vibration, you know? And that's kind of led me through the nose, because as I've just studied more, that kind of awareness, that level of understanding has kind of increased. But it generally, any shift in understanding generally happens between action and cut. So it's only recently, well, the last 20 years, that I've been able to bring that kind of understanding into my daily existence. You know?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it sounds like acting itself is quite spiritual to be able to transfer that energy.
I do. I mean, that's the spirit. That's how I earn my living. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm doing what I regard as a highly definitive part of myself.
Yeah, and you have to be in the zone, right?
You have to be in the zone, and you have to believe that. You know, in the scriptures, when it's quoted, Jesus saying, when people say, how do we do this, Master? You know, he says, I am the way. But I believe that in the language that he was speaking at the time, the verb to be wasn't. So he would have had to have said, I am is the way.
Yeah. So it's by doing, being.
I mean, which everybody has, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has this feeling
Yeah.
that they are. I mean, that's what's looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, there's a feeling before the thought happens,
Yeah.
before the thought moves you away from that, there's this feeling that you are. Well, you don't need to crucify a guy for that, do you know what I mean?
No.
Because he's saying to you, hey, what you are is the way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's, you know, that's something, and I thought, you know, because I don't really talk a lot publicly, you know, I just do my work, you know, and I just try to, I never really let a take go by. I don't start with being completely in the moment. You know?
Yeah. It's absolutely, and it shows. It shows in your work. It totally does. Question. So, I mean, in your illustrious career, you had a big time out, and this was with you going off to India. And if you could maybe share with us a little bit, the book talks a little bit about it, but it sounds like you just ended a relationship and just wanted to. Yeah, I think it was Jean Shrimpton, I think, at the time had ended their relationship, and you just wanted to kind of clear your head and, oh yeah, what happened? And
Well, it wasn't, I mean, the important thing to understand about that is it was a conglomeration of a lot of things, but the main thing was that I was out of work.
okay,
And the last film I did of any note was a film called The Mind of Mr. Soames in 1969. It was a wonderful script.
How old were you at the time?
Let's see, I was...
You were born, what year were you born?
I was 30. I was born in 38.
38, so you're just under 30, okay. Or no, you were 30,
30,
so
I
I was
was
31.
31.
31, yeah.
And my career ended.
Hmm.
And there was no real reason, or there was no tangible reason. Now I can look back and think I was so identified with the 60s that when the 60s ended,
Yeah.
the business,
Yeah.
the new one,
Sure.
they didn't want the old one.
Yeah.
So my agent said to me, I said, why haven't you got no work? They're looking for a young Terence Stamp. I was 31. I think.
Yeah.
So,
And you were already, by the way, at that point, you're a vegetarian. You're staying off dairy and wheat, and you're
not
you were
drinking,
in a good,
I'm
yeah,
not
you were in a
smoking,
good state in
I'm
your
in
life.
good
Yeah.
shape, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
and I'm out of work. And the days get very long for an actor.
Yeah. Obviously. Yeah.
And the phone just like didn't ring. I mean, just didn't ring. And so finally,
That's got to be tough.
yeah. And I thought, and I hadn't really understood Krishnamurti. I mean, when Krishnamurti said, when the eagle flies, it leaves no mark. What?
Yeah.
What does that mean, you know? When he says, the observer and the observed are not different. What? So I couldn't, but I knew that he was this lit from within.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, he's not lying to us.
Yeah.
It's just me. I'm too thick, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I'm not working. It's murder hanging around in London. I bought a round the world ticket. And I started going around the world. And I got to India. And I thought, wow. And then I came across another one. Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so different, chain smoking, beadies.
Afterwards, he also had, you said, cancer as well, right? Because of his chain smoking.
Dying of throat cancer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I first met him, and I started asking him questions, he said, "Who's answering? Who's asking?" I said, "Me." "Well, who's me?" "Well, Terence." "Well, what's Terence?" "Well, I'm an actor." "So, who's acting?" I mean, he was relentless, you understand? He didn't let you escape, you know. But the last time, one of the last times I saw him in his house, or his apartment, probably described as a house, he was chain smoking as usual, these little Indian fags, beadies, and a rather kind of crass Canadian disciple who was new said, "Excuse me, Maestro, you know, I've heard that like you've got a really bad condition of the throat. You know, I understand you've got cancer, and you know, why you still continue to smoke?" And Maharaj said, "Who's smoking?" So he wasn't.
Yes, absolutely.
He wasn't having different rules for himself, you know. So I wound up. I didn't live in India. I did live in India, but it wasn't a solid 7 years, you know. I was travelling as well, but Bombay became my base, really.
I see.
And it wasn't until I was in an ashram in Pune in 1977. And by now I'm Swami V10. I haven't cut my hair, I haven't shaved, I'm wearing orange robes.
Wow.
And I'm in this ashram. And
Wait, sorry, how do you, that's still quite a jump. What happens between Yeah. How did you get to that?
Oh no, because I'd heard about this great speaker,
Okay.
one of the world's great speakers, which I'm always interested in.
Yeah.
It was called Bhagwan Shri Vaishnav, and I'd heard about him. I'd heard he had this ashram, so I thought, I got on a train from Bombay, I went up to Pune, and I checked into this hotel called the Blue Diamond. You can imagine what it was like. Toilet was a hole in the floor. It was a real Indian hotel, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm invited almost immediately. I'm invited to go and live in the ashram, which is a great honour. And I get initiated. It was all. I mean, I was there to study him, but I went along with everything, you know. So he's
got chores you had to do in the ashram.
Yes,
as well.
yes. And I've got this new name, and it was a great place. It was mixed ashram, you know.
Yeah.
And he was teaching us all tantric sex and everything. So there was,
Really?
there was a lot of action going on. Anyway.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Actually, why not? Okay.
But on Sunday morning, the Blue Diamond Hotel served what is laughingly called full English breakfast. And a lot of the English sannyasa, who their names have been changed from like Curzon to Swami.
Well, were there a lot of English?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They become yogi and Prem Buddha and all kinds of things.
Sure.
So anyway, we all troop off to the Blue Diamond, which is like a walk from the ashram. And I've been in the ashram about a year, I guess. And as I go in, the great sannyas, as I walk in, the concierge says, "Oh, Mr. Terence, I got a cable for you, sir." And rummages around. He pulls out the old-fashioned telegram with the name stuck on, you know. "This is for you, sir." Gives me this bedraggled cable. And the minute he put it in my hand, the psychic weight of this cable increased.
Wow.
And I looked at it, and it was addressed to Terence Stamp, the Rough Diamond Hotel, Pune, India. And I thought, I knew it was like life-changing. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I dragged it open, and it was from my long-suffering agent. And I must have sent him a postcard, which I often do if I'm in a new hotel.
Sure.
And there's postcards on the desk. I sent it. And he said, "Would you be prepared to come to London to talk to Richard Donner about Superman 1 and 2?
That was a game changer,
You
obviously.
have scenes with Marlon Brando." I was on the night flight the next day.
Wow.
That was 77.
Amazing.
So from 69 to 77, I had no anything about
Not a single.
I had odd voices.
Okay, you did occasionally do it. Okay.
You know what I mean? But
So you did come back to London occasionally.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Bombay was the base.
Yes, but I didn't have a proper job.
Yeah.
From My Name is Sam to Superman 1 and 2.
Wow.
And the big blessing in disguise, which you talk about the richness of my life, in those years out of work, I had transmuted myself without really knowing it. But I moved from being a leading man to being a character actor because General Zod was a villain.
Yes.
And they did everything they could to destroy my natural photogenic look and everything. You know, they lit me from below.
Wow, yeah.
They put crappy makeup. They gave me a horrible costume, you know.
Sure.
But the fact is, if I see anybody about 45 years old looking at me in the street, I was in New York once, and it was before I became a member of the New York Athletic Club, and somebody had got me an invite into their club to go and have a steam. That's where I deal with, like Socrates,
Yeah. So you said you do a lot of steam baths.
jet lag and everything.
Yeah.
So I go to this.
So you mean it's like a wet sauna, basically.
Yes, Turkish bath.
Yeah.
So I get in this place and I strip off and I put my clothes in the locker, and I don't know where the wraps So I say to somebody, where's the wraps? And they say, oh, well, it's that way. So I'm walking down towards the wraps, completely naked. And I don't look, I'm a pretty skinny guy, you know. And coming towards me are two black guys and a white guy in the middle. They're all real hefty guys, and they look like a licorice also, you know what I mean? They're like black with this white in the middle. and they're looking at me like strangely, you know. And I took a chance, you know, and as I got near them, they were staring at me, and I said, "Kneel before Zod, you bastards," you know. And they laughed, you know.
That's awesome.
It's him, it's the general, you know.
Oh, it's great.
So more kids, that was their first movie experience.
Yeah.
And they were the best, the first, no question.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Every comic book since has nicked stuff from that. They were the archetype.
Totally.
They were the imprint. But I guess more kids who saw the movie identified with the villain than they did with Superman. You know? And it's the only real commercial movie I've ever been in. You know? I mean, it made a fortune, those two movies.
Yeah, it really did. Amazing. Actually,
And Dick Don has been 20 years restoring because he was fired because we shot both of them together.
wow.
And when he spent so much money, the producers said, finish one. And as soon as he finished one, they fired him. They brought in Richard Lester. And he took out Brando. He made Superman's mother the lead. So when Donna was years looking for all the old footage, and he's finally put out the director's cut, and all the stuff with Brando, consequently Brando and me, has been restored. So if anybody ever says to me about Superman 2, I say, director's cut.
That's what we got
Rent
to see.
the director's cut.
Absolutely. Yeah. Amazing. Wow. Yeah. I love those movies, and you were unbelievable.
They were but it was years of waiting. Do you understand? I was so hungry when that movie came up.
Yeah.
That I thought, God, I can't wait. And the first time with Brando was wonderful because it was his 13th day. And I read in the papers that he got paid $1 million for 12 days.
Jeez.
And I said to him, Marlon, your 13th day, they've given you extra money? And Marlon said, it's gratis.
That's
It was given him
free
today.
day, yeah. Baker's dozen.
Yes. But like, in his close-up, which was my first scene with him, the camera was on him. So I wasn't on camera. I was just his eye line, you know. And he came up, and he was doing Marlon, you know what I mean? He wasn't particularly mindful at all. And when they said action, I just went off. I went off like 9-8 years of frustration. But he got it immediately. And he was right. He was instant.
Amazing.
I got the full Brando, you know. So he could do it. I mean, there was no question.
Yeah.
He was the best.
He had the goods.
Yeah.
So during those 8 years, like in the ashram, what did you do? I mean, did you meditate? I mean, what type of things did you?
It was kind of like first of all, it was him talking.
Okay.
2 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
No notes.
Yeah. So you just sat and listened.
Yeah, everybody sat and listened.
Yeah.
That was like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Went until 10. And people would send in questions and he would just answer. And that's what I was there for.
Mm-hmm.
And
And then the rest of the day?
the rest of the day, there were like groups that you could study anything.
Including tantric sex.
Including tantric sex. And there was a rumour around the ashram that he was preparing me to teach the tantric group because it wasn't an actual group at the time.
Okay.
he was talking a lot about it,
Gotcha.
about Tantra. And all the disciples were saying, when are we going to have a tantric group? And the room, and I can't say this is true because I genuinely didn't know, but there were word around the ashram that he was preparing Viten, which was my Swami Viten, that was my name. And it meant far away, and I used to say it meant far out. People used to ask me, what if Viten was far out? And I think that had I not gone back to do the Superman moves, it was on the cards that he was going to train me, he was going to teach me about the actual exchange in Tantra. But we learned a lot about it because we had all the theory.
Yeah. And so, okay, but then...
But there were
what about some of the more, I don't know, boring parts of the days?
You could study anything. You could study massage, you could study hypnotherapy.
Okay.
There's
a lot of workshops.
Yes. Oh, what was that? It was a group that was very violent.
Wow.
Encounter. 12 people you were in a room, you weren't allowed out, you know. And the group leader was like trying to get you to awareness, you know.
Wow.
Like going through people would freak out, you know, people would come up with things that had happened to them. I mean, it was extraordinarily violent.
Wow.
That was the encounter group, you know. People were really frightened to do the encounter group, but like, if you got really difficult people come to the ashram, he'd say, oh, yeah, encounter group. He'd prescribe the groups.
Yeah.
You couldn't just like join anything. You know?
Sure, I see.
He would guide you.
Different paths.
And I just couldn't say the degree of his enlightenment. He certainly wasn't like
How long were you in the ashram?
In a year.
Okay.
He certainly wasn't like Nisargadatta. And when I said to Nisargadatta, I finally, it's in the book, I took him out to tea at the Taj.
Yes.
And we talked, I mean, he only spoke Marathi, he didn't speak English. We always had a translator with him. But I said to him, you know, I have sat with Krishnamurti, you know, what do you think about that?
During those years that you were away, you also stayed with a geisha
Yes.
for some time?
Yes, I lived in Kyoto for a while.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Oh, no, it was just, it was wonderful. I mean, that was a trip I did with a guy called Baron Frederick van Pallant. He was part of a wonderful singing group called Nina and Frederick. And his dad, Baron Flores, had been a pupil of Hazrat Inayat Khan. And so Frederick had introduced me to the Sufi message.
Oh.
So that was one of the things I was studying, you know, in my spare time. And when I was in India, I stayed in touch with Frederick. And he said he was planning a trip to Japan, and why didn't I go with him? So I flew to Japan from Bombay, and I met him. And his sister, his father had been a diplomat. His father was the ambassador for Holland.
Mm-hmm.
But his sister had also married a diplomat.
The ambassador for Holland in the UK.
In India.
Oh, in India, okay, sorry.
And then yes, I mean, he'd been, you know, he was a lifelong diplomat, Baron Flores. But what happened was that Frederick's sister had married a diplomat, and they'd been in Japan, and she'd given Frederick introductions to people. And so when we arrived in Tokyo, we were met by this woman who Frederick had introduction to, was married to a big industrialist. And her name was Chako-san. And Chako-san and Frederick had obviously, it was a great talker, Frederick. And he said to her, we were from England, you know, we'd like the kind of geisha experience, you know. And so she had recommended a geisha house that she knew. And that's how we wound up in Kyoto, staying in a proper geisha house.
Wow.
So that's where I learned about tatami and, you know.
It sounds like you had a good time there.
Oh, it was totally wonderful, wonderful.
And
But then-
to this day, what you also use tatami still now, right? Or no, or you did later. It's in the.
I had, when I lived in the Albany, after I came back from that world tour, I got a new set of chambers in the Albany. I lived up the top. I lived in something called G3. And what happens in Albany is that each set has its own servants' quarters that are on the top floor. Most don't have servants, they just use them as little
Sure.
apartments. But the funny thing about G Block was that it wasn't a double. It was only G1, 2 and 3. There wasn't like 4, 5 and 6. So the whole top floor, that fell to me. So I had the servants' quarters of 1, 2 and 3. So I basically had like a duplex.
Yep.
And I made the top floor like a little Kyoto.
Wow.
I had 11 tatami bedroom, and I had shoji paper on the windows and the doors, and I had a Japanese bath. I had this wooden bath that was flown from Japan, full of water, because they can never dry out.
Wow.
They're made to such precision. There's no glue or anything. They're just made to work.
Amazing.
But they have to be kept full, so the wood stays stretched, as it were.
Wow.
So
You can change the water, but you always have to
but
put.
you have your bath,
Empty
and
it.
then you rinse, and then you get in the tub.
Yeah, well, that's right. In Japan, you
just
first
sit.
you always go in when you're clean into
Yes.
the bath, and that way the rest of the family can share the bath.
Yes, and then it just, you can change it, but it never remains empty.
Yeah. Wow.
So I had that, and I lived there. I guess I was there for about 20 years. You know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. You definitely brought back a lot of the Far East with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still got a lot of my Cardi pajamas. I mean, I got rid of the orange ones, but I've got all the white Cardi, you know. And when I lived in Ibiza, I used to wear my white Cardi things because it's very hot there in the summer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Amazing. And speaking of bringing things back, I mean, do you still have any particular daily practices that you do? Do you meditate? Or you say you do breathing exercises,
Yes, I haven't missed any breathing exercises. I don't think I've ever missed a day of breathing exercises. And they are really the result of things I've collected. Like, I got my first breathing exercises not from Hazrat in Etan himself, but I got them from a nephew of Hazrat.
Oh.
And he gave me my first alternative breathing and stuff like that. It's called...
So your breathing exercises really do come from the Far East rather than from like Western.
Oh no, they're all from Far East.
Okay, because okay.
And Krishnamurti never taught me, but his great friend was Dame Contessa van der Scarabelli. And what happened was that apparently when he was about 60, he came back to Florence, where Vanda lived, and he said, look, there's really something to this yoga, because people who do it just age in better shape, and I think we should get into it. So as I understand it, the first year they brought over, I believe it was Krishnamacharya, who was the leading yogi at the time. And he stayed with Vanda and Krishnaji, and they studied yoga with him. And that went on for like 2 weeks, let's say. And then the next year, and that may be more than 1 year. But then he was too old to travel, and he sent Desikachar, Char, who was his close relative. So Desikachar Char taught them. And then when Desikachar Char couldn't come, he sent Iyengar.
Wow.
And Iyengar hurt Krishnamurti. He hurt me as well. I mean,
How? What happened?
he's just... I said to Krishnamurti never said a word against anybody, but I said to him, Iyengar hurt me. I understand he hurt you. I only had one lesson with him. And Krishnamurti said, yes, he is a bit militant.
Ouch. I see.
Yeah, he was big trip he was on Iyengar. Still is, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I learned most of my breathing from Vanda. So she learned it from Desikachar, Char, Krishnamacharya, and Iyengar. So she gave me.
Could you demonstrate one of your exercises that you do?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess breathe in for 10, hold for 40,
40. Wow, that's a
out
lot.
for 20, hold for 10.
All through the
Empty.
nose? No. Wait.
Yeah. In for 10, hold for 40, out for 20.
Well, each
Hold
time
for
a different
10.
nostril.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then in for 10, hold for 40, out for 20,
When you say
hold
40,
for 10.
are we really talking like 40 seconds here? Or?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a long time.
And let's say, yeah, half a dozen of those. Oh, that's one.
And you wow.
That's one, right?
Yeah. So, okay, so you do each nostril
And then both nostrils.
and you out in both nostrils.
Yes, that's one. So 1, 2,
So hold on. Sorry. So you're taking in from one nostril, out from the other, and then
and then in from the other nostril, and then out from the other nostril,
all right.
and then in from both,
Got it.
out from both.
Got it.
And that's one.
Got it. So you go one nostril, the other nostril, both.
then both.
One nostril. You keep
Yeah.
cycling.
And that's, I would do, let's say, 5 or 6 of those. That's one of the things I do. The other nostril, the other thing that's really helped, it's really wrong to talk about breathing, to be honest with you,
Okay.
because it's so delicate.
Yeah. Sure.
You know what I mean? I would hate to people say, oh, I saw Stamp do that, because you could hurt yourself.
Yeah. Don't
You
try
see
and
what
do
I
it.
mean?
What you just said is a very challenging exercise.
Oh,
That is
yeah,
not something,
yeah, but we
that is
talk-
not something that anybody can just pick up.
No,
on.
sure. And of course,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody was starting,
Yeah. They have to
you
start
could
easy.
do in for 5,
Sure.
hold for
Sure.
20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have
And
to
that
be
is
sensible.
very impressive.
But the truth is, it's since 1968, I haven't missed a day.
Unbelievable.
And it's always, it changes. Do you see what I mean? Like I've got more sophisticated. Like Pilates, Joe Pilates, something I've also studied, with his breath, which is exactly the same as breathing in India, is that when you breathe out, you squeeze this. And Joe Pilates describes it as like wringing out a blanket.
Mm.
So when you breathe out,
It's about the diaphragm. Wow. That really strengthens the core.
of course. But why am I so obsessive about the breathing? Well, you can live without food for about 90 days.
Yeah. Is that true? Really that long?
Yeah. You can live without water for 7, 8 days.
At most, yeah.
But breath is the condition under which we're here.
Yeah.
So on a relative scale of importance,
It's the highest.
I mean, you could solve the prison problem by teaching people about breath. First day they go in prison. You could really solve it.
Well,
But
maybe
nobody does. I mean,
they're trying to bring mindfulness into prisons now.
I know, but that's after the fact.
Yeah.
You could start giving them breathing exercises on day one,
Hmm.
and you could watch. It could be like a class. People could do it. Then they would come out different. They wouldn't come out worse.
Wow.
They wouldn't be releasing people that are more violent when they go in. You know,
Sure.
because prisons it doesn't help people.
And it makes it worse, right? Because you're out with other criminals, you learn how to become a better criminal.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Sometimes.
but I mean, I'm sure so much crime is unawareness of breathing.
What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, well, a guy stabbed this old guy to death.
Mm-hmm.
Road rage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Well, he was totally out of control. What was out of control?
Breath. Yeah.
Oh, he's dead? Oh, oh, I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. And if you see him on the news,
Oh,
he's
geez.
this young, quiet guy.
Yeah.
What
Lost
changed?
it. Yeah.
So the only thing that can change is breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Something upset him.
Yeah. But you're right. You're right. Breathing is everything.
It's the beginning.
It's true.
Because
Yeah.
when breath leaves the body,
Yeah. It's true. That's when people hyperventilate. That's when they faint. That's
when
Yeah,
breath
right.
leaves the body, what happens to the body? Gets buried, right?
Yeah.
When
Absolutely.
breath leaves the body.
Well, that's when you die. Yes, totally. of
Yeah, but
course.
I mean, when breath leaves the body,
Yeah.
you die.
Yeah.
When you're born, breath comes into the body, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
first scream.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fundamental.
Yeah,
It
it's
really-
fundamental.
It really is,
But
and
it's
even
not-
even just a short amount without it, right? I mean, can cause brain damage.
Well, you can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
They read, did you hear about this alligator they caught roaming around Manhattan?
Yeah, I heard something.
And somebody had duct taped its nostrils. I mean, it just died.
Wow.
Couldn't get it off.
Jesus. Oh, it's awful.
Sad, but I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Breath is everything.
yeah.
That's right. I actually created. I'm a keen chess player.
Ah, right.
And I invented a chess variant called diving chess, where you play chess in a swimming pool, and the board is submerged underwater,
Right.
and each player takes turns diving in to make their move, and you can think for as long as you can hold your breath.
Fantastic.
So you have to make a move before you emerge once again, and then your opponent goes back down, and they have to make a move
Yeah.
before they come back up.
Yeah.
And so it goes. It's a lot of fun. You mentioned in your book that you love swimming, and that you also sometimes try and do laps underwater as well, or swim underwater rather.
Yeah, and also I do laps with not breathing. I mean, I had this accident on a movie which I don't want to get into because it was a terrible accident. But I do my recovery in water, and it's behooved me to run up and down, not to swim, because I have the pelvis broken in 6 places.
Jesus.
And I've noticed that when I started doing the water therapy, I could do a length on one breath. Now I can do 2,
Wow.
and I'm working toward 3.
Now hold on. How long is the length in this pool?
Bit longer than this room.
Yeah. So we're talking about like 25 meters or something like that, maybe.
About as long as this, yeah.
Oh, this room actually is it's not that big, but I get you. I get
It's a
what you're
bit
saying.
bigger than this room. It's about to that far wall where that
Yeah.
lamp is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me. It's just that
Yeah.
they do.
Amazing.
When I get in there, I always
Do you have a
try.
time how long you can?
No.
No. Okay.
I just sometimes I count the paces, you know. But fact is,
Wow.
there's a wonderful book actually that would be great in your shop. I think it's called somebody bought it me for Christmas a few years ago, and it's written by a man. It's called something strange, like breathology or something, but it's written by the man who has the world record for holding his breath.
Wow.
What do you reckon that is?
I reckon it's around...
Underwater.
Yeah, I think it's around like 12 minutes or something like that. What is it?
20.
Jesus. That's unbelievable.
No, but it's very inspiring
That is inspiring.
because
yes.
he tells you how to do it.
Wow. Yeah.
It's an really, really interesting book.
Wow.
And he is the world champion. It's not like you say, oh, I can't believe that guy.
Right. It's proven.
It's proven. This guy goes underwater, sits there for 20 minutes, right? And he tells you how he does it. He tells
Have you
how
been
to
trying some of the...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't aspire to that.
Yeah.
But like, as you say, you can always learn. It's totally fascinating to me, breath.
Well, we came from water, right?
Yeah.
Or supposedly, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, and breath is everything. You mentioned also in the book something about like how human, the word itself is like the hue in front of man that's like the first breath, right?
Yes, the who. You can hear the who. You can hear it in the wind. You can hear it in toll of a bell. You know, but in the first interpretation of who. I'm not sure if it was Sanskrit or was a very early language form, meant divine. And man actually meant mind. So human is the divine mind.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So when I asked Krishnamurti what happened that night, you leaned against the pepper tree. I said to him, what were you like before? And he said, I was an idiot. And then he corrected himself. He said, I was gormless. He actually pulled his jaw down. I said, wow. And what happened to you the night of the pepper tree,
Yeah, this was when he had his enlightened moment.
And he said, the ocean fell into the drop.
It's a beautiful... yeah.
So he was, there's hope for us all, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, he was like...
Yes, there is. I believe that, absolutely.
That's why he had his little brother with him, because parents would give him money. He'd give it to the first beggar who asked.
Wow.
They'd send him out for a walk. He'd just walk.
Yeah.
So he had to have his little brother,
So to
Nico.
keep him, yeah.
So when the Theosophists bought him, they gave the parents money to take him, to England. They brought the little brother as well.
Yeah.
Because he was gormless.
Keep him in check, yeah. Wow.
Wonderful. Right?
Yeah, that is wonderful. Wow.
When you see what he became, I only met him.
So he's your biggest inspiration?
He was my very first, I would have to say. I have met other people
Sure,
in that condition,
of course, yeah.
but he was the first one I ever met. And in truth, although he only changed